It's amazing all you heard the news and you decided to stay. So, yes, Guy had an emergency, not with him, with his family. So it's always nicer to be in person, isn't it? I think it is. And so that's what Guy said. He called me at 3 o'clock and Kate, and he said, I think we should offer to them that we should have a class anyway because people are going to come. And so that was the point of using everything. And so that's what we want to do tonight. So what we always like to start with is just coming back into our body. That's how we can always start. Just be here and be present, because our attention, I'll talk a little bit about it, is one of the freedoms that we have. It's a choice we have, is to have our attention and know that we're sitting in a chair, for me to know that what's the sound of my voice, and to try to stay present in the room. And we think it'll be a very useful class for all of us. We're not here to show you anything new other than just share and discover together. So we're going to do that, and we'll start with Kate. She'll be first, and then I'll come up after her.
All right, thank you, Doug. All right, well, hello. My name is Kate, as Doug said, and yes, I'm also a longtime student with Guy, and I'm the webmaster at Life of Learning Foundation, and usually I'm where Ray is, behind the scenes, running the live stream or whatever, and so it's rare that I'm sitting up in front of the group. But like Doug said, when the call came, I answered. What else is there to do but to step up into real life and do what's asked of us in the moment. And that is a real freedom, and that's what we're talking about tonight is, what is the first and last freedom? Before I talk about freedom, I thought, well, let's talk first about captivity. Because I don't know about you, but we don't really think about the fact, I don't really think about the fact that actually, if I'm honest with myself, I spend most of my day in captivity. And I'm talking about like an inner captivity, So there's the captivity of fear when the call comes, you've got to prepare a talk in the next couple of hours and present it in front of a group of people. Or there's the captivity of irritation when things don't go smoothly at work, which seems to happen quite a lot. Or just when things don't go the way I want them to go. There's the captivity of rushing when I look at the clock and I realize I'm late for something or I need to get somewhere. There's a captivity of resistance and anger when I feel like other people or other groups are trying to get me to do something that I don't want to do or I don't like, Captive, I'm often the captive of judgment of others when they don't act the way I think they should. I'm the captive of self-judgment when I make mistakes. So I guess, does any of that apply to anyone here? No one can relate? All right, well, we're done then because I don't have anything else to talk about. So I think that if you were to decide, okay, I'm just going to take one of those little spiral notebooks and a pen and carry it with me all day, and I'm going to write down, every time I realize that I'm the captive of something, you would fill the pages pretty quickly. I know I would. And I don't think it's a stretch then to say that Kate spends most of her day a captive of something, a prisoner of something, and not really knowing what real freedom is. We think of freedom as being a physical thing. But what we learn, what we've learned in this kind of work that we do with Guy, the things that he teaches, what he encourages us to, and invites us to see for ourselves, within ourselves, we're always talking about inner freedom first. And it's the inner freedom that leads to a real relationship with life, a meaningful relationship with life. And I feel like the lesson that comes back to me again and again and again is that I am actually, when I'm the captive of something, what it really is I'm the captive of myself. Like and you might say, well, wait, there are things that happen out there that, someone does something, they say something cruel to me. The weather, it's rainy when it's supposed to be sunny. I'm supposed to do something outside. Make your own list, right, of all the things that happen that cause you to feel the way you feel, that make you feel like you are now a prisoner of negativity and that you have no other choice. That's what we're kind of used to, is thinking that I wouldn't feel the way I do, I wouldn't do the things that I do unless this, if this hadn't happened or that person wasn't the way they are, then I wouldn't be the way I am. And that's what we're really a captive of, is that thinking, I think that's a huge switch. That's a huge step in understanding what the first freedom is, is when you start to get a glimpse of the fact that, no, I'm a co-conspirator here in my own captivity, in my own unhappiness and negativity. And when I look at it and I examine it, what actually happens as a result of feeling like I'm a captive of other things? Well, it's what I do all day long. I try to control everything, I work to try and maneuver and manipulate and control and get things lined up and get people to do things. And where does that lead us? That leads us to making that super long list in the spiral notebook, I mean, it's obviously, again, I'm just sharing with you what I've seen for myself, and these are probably very basic things that you can see for yourself. But they're basic, but they are like the golden key to a whole different relationship with life. When you start to see and understand these kinds of things, when you start to observe these kinds of things, when that observer within you starts to get developed, then there's a whole other possibility that comes in. A whole new type of glimpse of a whole new type of freedom comes to you. So, that's kind of why I said I wanted to start there, talking a little bit more about the true nature of captivity, because as long as Kate thinks that she's a captive of all the things that go wrong outside of her, all the things that disturb her, then I will never understand, I will always be trying to address that. I will always be trying to, I'll be spending all of my time working on these things outside of me that ultimately, prove to just, I just still find myself in bondage, every day. So obviously something's not working when I stick with that kind of thinking. So when we're talking about real freedom, this is the first thing that I know for myself I want to always remember, is that I'm not a captivity of what's happening outside of me. I'm a captivity of what's happening inside of me. I'm a captive, of a wrong relationship that's going on inside of me first. And when I can work with that, now I have something new. It's like a tool that I can take into every moment with me. It's a tool that I can take into this moment where I'm feeling nervous talking in front of all these people, right? It's a tool that I can take with me when I go into the moment where I have to have a conversation with someone that I don't want to have. It's a tool I take with me when that phone call comes. Recently I got the phone call that my 94-year-old father was in the hospital. He's fine. All these medical emergencies, right? But nonetheless, what do I ground myself in those moments? Do I ground myself in this imagination about how the world is supposed to be, or how things are supposed to be unfolding? Or can I ground myself in a real relationship in that moment with what is real life itself? So that's where we come to understand our first work is, that's what I've come to understand in the work that I do anyway, with what we're talking about. And I thought, I would just read a couple of quotes from one of Guy's books. He has this really great book called The Essential Laws of Fearless Living. He has all of his books are great. But, and I kind of want to back up a little bit first before I go to that. I realized that I didn't even say anything really about myself. Like, I told you I'm the webmaster at Life of Learning, but I I started out working in high tech in the Bay Area in California, in Silicon Valley, and I moved here to Ashland actually in 1998 and was working at a software company here in Ashland, and happened to just meet someone who had a connection to the foundation. This was a couple of years after I had moved here, so this is probably in like 2000. And he would talk about the things that Guy would speak of in these classes that he gives, and I just found it intriguing. You know, I had left the Bay Area because I was deeply unhappy. You know, I just felt very discontent with my life. Here I had a good job, I had good friends, I had a good social life, and I just always felt like something was missing. I can remember always feeling like, you know, is this it? You know? Like, there's got to be something more. But I didn't have, you know, some of you, I'm guessing a lot of you probably have thought you probably feel like you've been seekers for your whole life. I mean, maybe some of you it started at a very early age. I didn't have that at all. Not that I wasn't aware of that at all for myself. You know, I often say I kind of feel like I backed into this work and turned around and went, what's this, you know? But I ended up going up to listen to a talk that Guy gave up in Merlin, and wow, I was riveted, because I really felt like he was, well, first of all, I felt like he was putting words to questions I didn't even know I had. Like, I didn't even know how to put it into words for myself. And it just immediately resonated with this deep discontentment that I had been feeling in my adult life. And I would have been probably in my early 30s at the time. And I just am sort of amazed that that something like that can happen, where you can have a meeting with truth or something truthful. In this case, it was in the form of a teacher, but really all that the teacher represents is just someone who has a bigger view, is a little further ahead of you on the path. And like I said earlier, they're inviting you to see what they see. And I'm grateful, you know, for that opportunity to stop blaming everything else in my life for what wasn't going right, and to start actually doing the inner work, you know. And I think that when a person understands that really they need to go inward, that brings a very specific responsibility to you. I mean, you may not realize it at the time, but when you have ears to hear, you know, and eyes to see, you know, truths, and I'm talking about eternal truths, then you have a real responsibility to step into the moment, you know, like Doug and I are doing tonight, or like you are, you know, you stayed, you're here because something in you wants to have a deeper relationship with what's right and true. All right, well, that was a little detour, but I'll just tell you some of these quotes that I found in Guy's book on freedom. True freedom is not an achievement. It is our awakened relationship and participation with the genesis of real life. Right? So that's, you know, have you ever had a conversation with someone? Okay, let's contrast these two things. Think about when you go into a conversation with the speech already ready to go with someone. You know, when you have to have a conversation with someone and you already know exactly what you're going to say and you're rehearsing it. How does that go versus when you have a real heart-to-heart, you know, connection with someone? I mean, that you know, when you are engaged in real life actually comes through you and enlivens you. And there's a huge difference, you know, between recycling your old dead thoughts and trying to make life, you know, into the shape that your thoughts tell you it should be in, and actually having a direct participation with real life. You know, like I said, one is dead and one is alive, literally. And that, you know, when we're talking about awakening your true self, you're awakening that real relationship in the moment that's present in every single moment. All right, here's another quote from Guy. Don't wish for freedom, choose it. Start by challenging the false notion that negativities are true powers. Deliberately walk past any dark state whose painful presence, left uncontested, makes you a prisoner of its domain. That's what I was kind of trying to say earlier when I was giving you my little list of all the things I find myself a captive of, you know. this is what's beautiful about this kind of a work. Like I said, there's sort of gets a little observer that gets awakened in you that kind of goes into moments with you. And even when you feel like the momentum, when I feel the momentum of Kate going ahead of me, and it feels impossible to, slow her down, there always is still something that's observing and knows that there's another choice here. And maybe I actually don't have the power in that moment, and I say that in quotes, because I don't want to make it seem like you call on a specific power. Real power is being present. Real power is presence. In fact, Guy likes to talk about not the present moment, but the presence moment. And I love that. I think that's, that's what we want to be engaged in. All right, here's another one. Freedom is not found by avoiding what disturbs us, but by illuminating, realizing and releasing whatever may dwell in the dark of us that can be disturbed. Well, that's it too, When Kate is bothered by something that happens in the moment, well, what is it within me that's bothered? That whole thing of like you can have several people who go through, let's say there's the stock market crashes or something, and someone who's heavily invested in the stock market is going to be, obviously discontent over that. But someone who's not, doesn't affect them whatsoever, right? So it's not the event that has caused the problem. It's what it is in you that has an unseen or unconscious demand on the moment. That is where you need to start looking. So I like that, that we need to be looking at what it is in me. I need to look at what it is in me that's disturbed by the moment, instead of pointing outwards, trying to fix the disturbance that I think is outside of me. I'll just do one or two more here, and then I'll turn it over to Doug. And let's see. True fearlessness and freedom is knowing that we are made for whatever happens to us whenever we are willing to let God remake us in that moment.
Want to read that again, please?
Sure. True fearlessness and freedom is knowing we are made for whatever happens to us whenever we are willing to let God remake us in that moment. And that's the key right there. I mean, real life is trying to, just as you put a seed in the ground and things act on that seed to germinate, to start to grow. It has its roots in the ground. I think of that as us having our roots in the world, But then we're growing up into the light, and the light is acting on the growth of that plant. A person is a seed just like that. And just as we have a body that grows into this world, we also have a connection, a soul connection that grows in this world that has the, possibility of, we have that possibility anyway. And we are being remade, we are being invited to be remade and be brought into that broader life moment to moment. And just on a practical level, I'm thinking, again, going back to like you have a conversation with someone and it's not going very well. Let's say that you're at odds with another person. And if there's something in you that comes awake for just a moment and actually sees the other person in front of you, and maybe you see even a glimpse of pain on their face, and you literally in that moment, you've been remade into something else. You've been remade into something that can perceive, what's actually happening in that moment, and a new compassion can be born in you. There's another possibility. So instead of me being the instrument of just continuing to punish this person because I feel like they're punishing me, maybe there's something in Kate that can be born in that moment that can bear the pain of that moment for both of us, and a real compassion can be born. I think that's a beautiful idea. I think I'll just end with this one. Guy says, the freedom we seek is found everywhere and all at once. And I think that's sort of the summary of what I'm trying to say, in the few remarks that I made here. The freedom we seek is found everywhere and all at once. I am literally what I'm seeking. I think there's a quote, a guy says it, in class, I can't remember who it is, but it's something like you are what you've been seeking, and that's true. You know, all the answers are right here. It sounds kind of highfalutin, you know, it sounds a little, I don't know, maybe it's just something that for me, I know for me right now, I just have to keep working to try and realize and have realized within me that connection to something higher. I think I'll end there and turn it over to Doug.
Albert Einstein said, love is a better master than duty. And what we're talking about here is, and you're here, I think, because there's something you love in the truth. We all want to know the truth of ourselves. The word metaphysical, doesn't that mean above? There's something beyond, above or beyond the physical? And that's what every one of us knows in our heart, that that's true. But it's been covered up. It's been covered up, and as Kate started out her talk, it was about, we first have to see what's holding us captive. And that nobody can tell you this is what, you know, what's captivity for you. We have to each find out for ourselves. So I just want to take briefly the first, last, and talk a little about what is our true self and how does that all come together. I have no idea what Guy was going to talk about. He never gives the same talk twice, and he always, I probably heard 1,000 talks. The reason I keep going back, because I know there is something more for me to hear. It's like this 360-degree wheel, and if I show up, like you guys are here tonight, and I got several things from Kate. I don't know where she went. She left. Oh, there you are. I thought she went through that way. And if we use this properly, we can all gain something. You know, Guy has said to me, you want to stay in the struggle. Go into the struggle. You know, there's a Zen master who said, anything that is troubling you, anything that is irritating you, that is your teacher. Many of you have heard that. The wife goes, yeah, did you hear that one? Yeah, that's for you. I want you to hear that. But that is so true. But why are we so resistant to what life is always giving us? I mean, Guy calls at 3 o'clock and says, I can't come, and I know why. He's got this thing he's got to attend to. It's a medical emergency. And I thought we'd just cancel it. And he goes, nope, call up Nikki and say, give her the option. See if it would be good for a couple of us. He asked Kate and I to do this because we were both coming anyway, and say, would you speak? And nothing in me wanted to do it because I'm stepping into the unknown. When we give talks, we do give talks at the foundation, there's student times. You have a few days to prepare. We had 2 hours. But if I can't share something from 25 years of doing this work, then what is it? So the first freedom is, as I've said, the quote is that there's something in me, it's not me, that loves the truth. Love is a better master than duty. If I just do this out of duty to Guy, he always would tell us, never do this for me. And he would never push you into anything. It's your choice, which I've always appreciated. There's never been a heavy-handed, although Guy can be very strong, some of you have heard him, at the same time, the gentleness of the truth is always there, and it's not Guy speaking it. So an example is, if you want to be really free, do what you don't want to do. As often as possible. When you're standing in line in the store, and it's long, and there's nothing you can do about it, can you come back to yourself and just be in the room? You would find it works miracles. Just that one thing. Or your waitress doesn't show up for the longest amount of time, and they're already serving other people, and who am I, chopped liver? And you say, okay, well, that's my teacher, because I'm so irritated because this shouldn't be happening to me. Don't you know, all green lights for me wherever I go. And that's how this culture and this lower consciousness, that's why I like this word metaphysical, because there's something above this physical thing, this life of ours, that it's meant for us. And so the first freedom is, How do we do this? And I mentioned it at the beginning, is to have our attention. And you can see now how much of our attention is still right here. And you know, Doug is scared to death that I'm going to lose you. The part of me that wants to be approved of, which I'm separating in a way, wants you to approve of me and think I'm an okay speaker, even though this is what it is. But at the same time, if we keep our attention on the moment, I think Kate said it, the moment, the present moment, encompasses everything that we need. We don't need to add anything to it. We think we ought to add, we all think we have to have positions on religion or positions and opinions. Guy said this thing to a student. He always gives his talk. This is online. And I do encourage you to go online and hear. And this one student always has all of her positions in row. As a matter of fact, Kay and I were on the back end, and she sends it to me, and I said to Kate, I said, words, words, words. And I think it's from Eliza Doolittle, and I said Henry Higgins, but it was from My Fair Lady. It's just, she really has a good heart, but she's so caught up in his words, and he starts off with her very kindly, and yes, you're a warrior, you're really working hard. And then he said a few other things. He said at the end, and he doesn't speak directly to her, I hope someday you gag on all your words and opinions and just let it all go and just see, you know, because we have to drop all of that. How can we be in the present moment and still bring all our stuff into it? Most of us have heard that. I mean, that's the big takeaway from letting go. The secret of letting go is, what can I let go of today? Not what can I add today. What can I let go of in this moment? What is keeping me captive in this moment? The two things that I really love, and it's been part of my life, is music and golf. I was a musician for 25 years, 30 years, and then I built a golf course. Crazy thing to do. I wouldn't recommend it. But I love the sport and I love music. I was a music major in college. And but I'll go to golf for just a minute. I have two friends who we really kind of study inner life and golf. There's a book written in the 70s called The Inner Game of Golf, like The Inner Game of Tennis. The same guy, Tim Galway, wrote it. But I'll come around to this. I have a friend, he's from Florida, he's actually from England, and I was all trying to hit the ball. He's always telling me, he's a teacher, he's telling me how to do these things. He says, throw it all the way, and here's the one thing that you can just think about every time you stand up to the ball. There's just a little more. 5 words, just a little more freedom. Don't think about all the stuff you have to do, because all that does is tension. You know, when we're afraid of the unknown, this was in that book, Inner Game of Golf, when we're afraid of the unknown, we tighten, don't we? I don't know what's going to happen in this situation. I don't know if you're going to like me. You know, I don't know what's going to happen. Or in any unknown situation, the body tightens. We're conditioned because we're protecting. But how about just those 5 words, and anytime we start feeling uncomfortable, just a little more freedom. You're inviting freedom into the moment. And that freedom will actually help you see where you've been held captive. We don't do it. It's not something we womp up with some affirmation or anything. It's just seeing. And that's the other great thing about the teachings. Guy always says, find out for yourself. I'm not here to tell you what to do. And that's why I've stuck so long, because I want to know it for myself. I mean, go back, way back to the Stoics, know thyself. We are the canvas. Each of us are the own we're here to work on ourselves by seeing the fact of ourselves. And Guy says there's no bad fact. If you think about that, sometimes you see things about yourself and you say, there's a bad fact. But the reason you see it is so that you can transcend, so you can go above it. There's something that we can have a relationship with that'll help bring us above this level of humanity, which we can all agree, I think every one of us, the state of this world, there's got to be something else than how this is operating. Each one of us can be a different human being right now. Because one of the things that I like, Guy also, I taught him how to play golf. He asked me about 25 years ago, and he's more fanatical about it than me, because he likes what happens on the golf course, because there's no excuse. You're there as you and a ball, and what happens, you can't blame anybody. You can say your back hurts, you can say whatever the problem is. But there is so much self-discovery on the golf course. You know, if you've ever, anybody here played golf? Just so I know I'm talking to a few. So you're on the first tee. You're on the first tee to say, or you're on the driving range. What's the first thing you want? I don't want to look bad, right? I don't want to look like an idiot. I don't want to hit it. I don't want to top it. You know, but you go into that. You don't have a choice. If you're going to play, you go into it, and you learn about yourself. You can either be mechanical about it and kind of just, I'm going to learn the rules, or there can be a certain freedom in it. And that freedom transcends to everything. So how it transcends to music, and both Kate and I, we had a choir for 20 years at, which COVID shut down in, that's what I'm saying. Anyway, but we had a choir for 20 years, a volunteer, and very few singers. She happens to be a very good singer, and that one over there, and my wife, and her, and this one, those two all sing. But when you're a singer, what does tension do to singing? It's the worst. Well, public speaking, I mean, I'm doing my best because I've done this a few times. I've never done it in this short a notice, but I'm saying, if you ever want to be free, go into it. And so with music, I was actually a conductor for 25 years too. I had a musical theater group when we did musicals at Brit. I actually had a musical theater company here in the 80s called Lyric Theater Company in Ashland. And we hired people from the festival, and the seasoned actors and the people who knew how to find that freedom in themselves, so that there was no one there, and the text was coming through them, the music was coming through them, they knew their part, you know, and our part, there's nothing really heady-wise to know. It's just to be present in this presence moment as often as we can. We can do it right now. And every time we miss it, we can begin again, which I think is the last freedom. I'll just say that. I mean, I don't care how you name it. But when things go bad, there's nothing in the world that can keep you from starting over, other than just a whole mechanical set of voices talking to you once more. And if those voices were your voices, would they be telling you all the stuff they tell you? They can't be your voices. They're just this lower consciousness of voices that are currents that go around, and to see it. And I'm not here to bring any higher, those kinds of ideas. I think we all know that each of us has a responsibility to work. And you know, if you ever want to be free, you do the thing you don't want to do now, not something out there. And let me tell you, life will give you plenty of them. You don't have to go looking for them. They're always there. I don't want to talk to this person tomorrow, but I have to. Can I just be a kind human being and be as present as I can? Not that you're going to do it perfect, but isn't that a much better way to, as we go through life, just to see how can I, you know, we talk about being a light in this world. Every time you do something proper and right and remember yourself in a right situation, it does light up the whole world. That little bit of awareness, that little bit of attention that you brought in, because that's what you love. Do what you love. And the reason I like that quote, I'm bringing it back, is that we do things out of duty, period. But we have to see if we really are going to be a true, decent, right human being. We do what we love. What do you do all day long? You do what you say you love. You do all the activities is what I want to do. But you know, it's a start questioning is the part of it that's I found. And just a brief background like Kate gave, I grew up in the Christian church. I came to Oregon because there's this large church in Grants Pass who wanted a music director, and I somehow had some friends, and I got here and got my way into it, and had a 50-voice choir and children's choirs and handbell choirs, and it was a great thing, and I got involved, and I directed some of the operas with Rogue Valley Opera, directed even a guest conductor of the Rogue Valley Symphony once, and I loved all that, but it brought me, the church never answered anything for me. A belief system wasn't what It didn't let me find out for myself. There's a lot of great things about Christianity in itself is tremendous. But what we've done to it sometimes is ruin the principles. So I came into this work because my wife, mainly, she was interested in this verse, and she dragged me to a talk like this. And here was Guy sitting there, and only about 10, this was in Grants Pass, he had just moved here, and he told me later, he says, I just wanted to sit on my mountain and write books. But life said, no, you're going to start teaching. And he doesn't even call it teaching, he calls it showing. Because and I've appreciated that as well. But so I heard him, and I said, I really like Kate. I haven't heard anybody talk like that before. There's nothing pretentious. There's nothing like magical or trying to make me believe something. He was speaking the truth about awareness, about attention, about freedom, about the present moment, things that are very kind of ubiquitous out here nowadays. But they were more than just words. And back to this metaphysical, I knew he saw a bigger view than I did. And you know why he keeps seeing a bigger view than me? He works harder than me. He sits here and he works every day. This is the last thing he wanted. He wanted to come here really, really badly. But he couldn't. He had to be with his wife, and that was the right choice. And so he asked us to do this. But he's encouraged me to work harder. And I know that's like so important. I've seen people come over the years, come in and out of the foundation, say this is the greatest thing ever, and then it gets kind of close to home. And that's really what this work is all about, really showing you yourself for who you are. There are no bad facts, but there are certain things that we come up and you just, oh man, but yeah, that really is me. That really is me. Like, and I'll close with this. I mean, an example. It's important for me over these years, what I've learned is to try as often during the day to remember myself. And I also not just remember, what does that mean, remember myself? Remember that there's something higher. Remember there is a true self abiding in all of us. It's just been covered up by ideas and conditions and society. But if I can remember myself and actually have an aim in the same moment, I want to be a different kind of human being. I want to see this part of myself. I want to see where I argue with my wife. I want to see that part of me that has to be right. I want to see that. How many of you want to see that? I mean, none of us do. But that's remembering what's true and what's right in the moment is what we want. And the reason I like the classes and I keep going back is because it never stops. This is an endless journey. The name of the foundation is the Life of Learning Foundation. And that's what it is. You don't go there and get it and then you're done. Anyone who says they've got it, you can usually walk away from it. And that's arrogance. There's no getting it. We're all in this, and the basis of this is love. The basis of it is humility. It's never on, I have all this knowledge, because we can just gag on all this knowledge. And that isn't what sets us free. What sets us free is seeing ourselves every day for who we are, and then we'd be able to actually be more decent human beings to everybody else around us. So I think that's enough. Wow, we talked longer than that. I'm sorry. No, I'm not. Okay. So Katie, come on up here. Let's have questions, or if you have impressions talking about freedom, or whatever you'd like to talk about for a few minutes, and then we'll dismiss after that. So let's see what you guys have to say. Anybody? Yes.
I think we've had the wrong idea about freedom. We always think of it as being free from something.
Yes.
But true freedom is being free to experience whatever comes.
Ooh, I like that. Did you
Perfect.
pick that up with the live stream?
Yeah, repeat
Yeah.
that.
So just because of the microphone, she was saying that we might have the wrong idea about freedom. We think of freedom as being freedom from something, but it's more how did you put it?
It's freedom to experience
Free,
whatever comes.
freedom
Whatever
to
comes.
experience whatever
Yes.
comes, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whatever comes, you just deal with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was kind of in one of the quotes I think I read. It's not, freedom isn't something you achieve, that you go get or that's granted to you, but freedom is a choice in the here and now to be a
And-
part of what real life is. Yeah.
And that's a remembrance that it's a choice. In this moment, I have this choice, like not to say this cruel thing to that person. That choice can go by very quickly because that other self, that false part, there's a true self and a false self, I think we all know that, who wants to always be butting in and messing things up. But freedom that we have a choice in any moment.
It takes a while to learn to recognize that there's a pause between
Yes.
something we want to do and something that we choose not to do because
Right.
it might be harmful.
She's
Yeah.
saying, go ahead.
There's a pause between that, in that moment, thinking that there's something that we want to do and choosing not to do it. It takes a while to kind of detect or discern. Well, and that's what this is all about. I mean, it's when Doug said there's no bad fact about yourself. I mean, if I don't see Kate's arrogance, then I will always be a captive of Kate's arrogance. You know, if I don't see fear in a moment, then how in the world could it be changed? You know, so our first work is always let life please, you know, keep hitting me and poking me and prodding me and inviting me to see myself, because if I don't see these things, I'm just going to keep going on being these things.
Which is not a normal request.
Right.
Because we're asking to see the truth of ourselves.
Right.
Yeah. Yes.
Well, there's a couple things. First, I think that's lovely, this idea of kind of being the observer and being kind of have compassion for the defaultness that all of these captivities are. You know, it's kind of we were
Mechanical.
trained, you know, in various ways inside. You know, being little, we got trained to
Right.
have these things show up. But I'm also called, I just love this word remember, because years ago I heard Marianne Williamson speak on that in terms of re-putting together. When we remember,
Remembering.
we're actually like taking the members and reassembling. And so that whole aspect of having the privilege really
Right.
to, as human beings, to remember
Right.
and choose a new, you know, when once noticed, choose another way if one chooses to choose another way.
Well, I like your word default position.
Yeah.
Because when we see in us where we default, then our judgment on others is a lot less. But until we see in ourselves all that, we're going to continue to just point the finger out there. That's the problem. But to see that default position, that's gold. Yeah. Yes. Or you and you.
No, go ahead. The captivity. I love the Buddha, and I have a mantra. Actually, he's a great one-liner. Someone once said, "Oh, you mean like who's that guy, Groucho Marx? A great one-liner." He is, and it has been a ground for me for many, many years. I have no control over what anyone says or does. The only control I have is my reaction to it.
Yes.
Yes.
So what I'm doing, and that's the Buddha's teaching, what I'm doing is I'm giving other people the right to be whoever they are
Yes.
or what they feel. So I'm giving love, and even if it's unpleasant. And on the other hand, I'm releasing myself from captivity because I'm not responsible for someone else's reaction.
Right.
And there have been times in my life where I have a few hundred times a day I have to remind myself.
It's a life of learning.
But if you look at it, it is so basic. I have found the greatest truths are the simplest.
Yes.
And it is so very simple. What you were talking about, Kat, it's our reaction to either a situation, a person, or whatever. And is not really always the situation. It's our reaction to it. And so
Yeah.
I have found that to be a wonderful, for myself, a tool in, whoa, back it up, take another look.
Right.
Yeah.
There is a space. Like both of you were saying, it was Viktor Frankl who talked about the stimulus and response, and between there is a gap. And you know, how long have we known that? But how often do we go to the gap? We usually go to something triggers us, one way or the other, but the space is there.
It is.
It's just entering it is the tough part because we have this
You gotta
thing
become a
talking
real
to
good
us.
back
They're not getting away with that.
And it is a training. It is, that's
Right.
not automatic.
Right.
It's a process.
Right.
Yeah.
It's a training in the sense of, you know, once you start to actually see some of these things that are really going on, a new kind of need comes into it. There starts to be a sort of a wish, I'm speaking just personally anyway, there's a wish to, you know, I don't want to be that Kate, that mechanical, conditioned, you know, that's literally just, I said earlier, that's the difference between being dead and alive, right? I mean, that all is dead, but it can be used. It's all actually has a purpose now because it's as it comes up now. It's something that is used for me to actually, you know, have a shock
Right.
from that, and then something new grows out of that. You know, it's just in the seed analogy that I gave earlier. You know, it's a constant germination, growing, blossoming, giving off, you know, seeds, and is all of it kind of being this continuous activity.
The other correlation that I received from both of you was, and I certainly believe in a creator, and the Buddha is not the creator, he is a teacher. There is a Hindu yoga, it couldn't be any more simple. It involves only the mind, and it's called karma yoga. And what you do is you offer up everything to whatever your concept of the creator may be. And after, it's an unbelievable consciousness raising device. After a while, you will catch yourself saying, I offered that to God. You know, like, whoa, wait a minute, who am I? You know, I do it, I open the window and let God's light in, you know, and it becomes a way of life where you're inviting the light into your life.
Great.
And,
Nice.
it involves just intent. It does not involve anything else but intent.
That's a good word.
And, for someone who has had a life filled with many sorrows and hardships, that has really saved my life.
Good.
It really has.
Good to
Nice.
share that. You had something.
I just wanted to ask Mr. Finley's background and where he's from.
It's interesting.
Yeah. Briefly, and you know, if you want to know anything more, you know, I'll give a brief bio of him. GuyFinley.org, or just Google Guy Finley.
Okay, well,
So he came from, grew up in Beverly Hills. His father was in show business, so he grew up in that whole. Oh, you're looking at.
yeah.
He was the first. He had a duo. He grew up into music, and he was the first two white guys signed with Motown, and they actually, it was a pretty good group. He doesn't really show it. He had a great voice. He sounded like Michael Bolton to me.
Right, and the hair too.
And the hair, but he went that path, and he had all these friends in that Hollywood area, but he saw that wasn't it, and so he threw it all away. First of all, he went to India and did all of that, and looked for a guru over there, and that didn't work. And he found a man named Vernon Howard, and Vernon was a man who said this. I think it was Guy's wife, Pat, said Guy would have been a nutty mystic if it weren't for Vernon Howard. Vernon Howard grounded Guy when he was young. And Guy wrote the book Secret of Letting Go, I think in 1990. Is that right?
I think so, yes.
Yeah, but he had been studying with Vernon for probably 10 years before that. And
Vernon Howard.
Vernon Howard, yeah, that was Guy's teacher. And he's written several books. And then from there, Guy he taught in Ojai with someone else
okay.
with Vernon's foundation, and then Vernon died, and he moved up here after that. And he's been writing. I mean, he's probably one of the most prolific people. I mean, he talks and writes. I don't know how he does it, and he loves it.
Does he have like some other educational background besides music?
Wow. No formal. He was supposed to go to USC on a football scholarship, but he broke his neck.
God.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, so
Go read
broke something.
About Guy on the website.
Yeah, there's a bunch you can read, and
Okay.
he's
That's good.
been interviewed by a lot of people. So
Thank you.
you bet. Yes, sir.
I've been studying freedom and truth and fear for quite a few years. It's an endeavor of mine, a kind of avocation. And one of the things I've come to appreciate is that we all have a lot of fears. And under my microscope, about 90% of them are irrational. So I've really started to explore in the last couple of years, trying to differentiate between the rational and irrational fears. And I've come to appreciate that if we were to wipe out about the 90% of
Yeah.
fears that we have, we
Right.
would wipe out at least 90% of the emotional discomfort that we experience from leading a fearful life.
Right.
In other words, we expand into our inherent God-given freedom by eliminating the irrational fears that come up in what I call the overly protective ego. It's overly doing its job.
Yeah.
It's over-parenting the kid and not letting them go outside to play because it's too dangerous. And telling them other kids are dangerous, don't talk to them. All that bullshit. If we can identify that, separate from the rational fears that keep us alive, then we've opened the door to kicking them out.
Really, the only rational fear or physical thing. If a bear came into
Right.
the room,
No one has to tell you,
you don't
get
have
out.
to. Nobody tells you what to do.
Right.
Let's talk about what to do now that bear is coming into the room. But and Guy would say that all the psychological fear is concocted, as you're
Right.
saying.
Well, I said 90 because I didn't
Yeah.
want to say 100.
Yeah.
But I can tell you, I agree exactly with you because every rational fear that I've come up with in a list, they're all physical.
Yeah.
Walking across a lake
Yeah.
where you don't know how thick the ice is.
That's right.
That's a rational fear.
That's inherent in your body.
Yeah.
So.
I want
Yeah,
to,
but worrying about what somebody thinks about how you look when you're never going to talk to them and never see them again, and they're not going to affect your life whatsoever, but you are fearful of what they think of you. That is where the trouble starts.
Good work.
And we do that
That's
a
good
couple
work.
hundred different ways every day, and no wonder we're all conflicted.
Yeah.
I'm
conflicted.
I agree with this, and I've come to appreciate the importance of recognizing irrational fear and kicking it out.
yeah. So talking about irrational fears, actually, Guy gave a talk recently where he said something like, we don't fear the unknown, we fear the known. Meaning the mind is always going ahead of you to tell you, what's going to happen if you walk across this ice, over lake, or what's going to happen if you go into this conversation with this person. And the mind is what's actually telling you what's going to happen, and in a sense, creating that irrational fear ahead of you. And so I thought that was really interesting. We're not afraid of the unknown; we're actually afraid of the known. What the mind is telling you.
I wrote that down when you were saying captive. I mean, we're captive by thinking we know. Knowing is
That's
is
right.
captivity. To actually be in the not knowing and allowing really takes something, because
Yeah.
that has to have trust and kind of openness to being guided by something bigger than ourselves. But when we know or think we know, we're really shortchanging ourselves. That's my experience.
That's right. It's a limitation, really.
Limitation.
To know that you don't know is freedom. And I think many people have said that form. To really know that you don't know, it frees you up to learn. So we said we'd go a little shorter tonight. If there's nothing, anybody else have one more thing?
If I can piggyback on what you just said
Okay.
about what we don't know,
Yeah.
one of the things I like to remind myself is I don't have any fear of what I don't know.
Right. Exactly. That's what I was saying. There's no fear.
You're saying a mantra?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We don't have fear of what we
Every time
don't
of the day,
know.
Walking down the street,
Yeah.
hey, you know what? I don't have any fear of what I don't know. Well, everything's fine.
All right.
Go do it.
Good. Good. Thank you.